When we talk about cancelled games, we often point at Starcraft Ghost, Scalebound, Silent Hills, and Star Wars 1313. These were potential AAA titles from major game studios. But there are many projects that disappear without much media attention. These projects are not based on big franchises or popular brands. In this video, we want to tell you about 10 forgotten games that were never released, and hopefully you will be like, "Hey, I remember about that one." Over 10 years ago, a studio called Offset Software announced an epic fantasy first-person shooter they tentatively called Project Offset. For its time, the game looked simply gorgeous. It would feature epic battle scenes, a mix of close-quarter and long-range combat, and rideable creatures like siege trolls and dragons. The game was to be played through the eyes of several characters. Intel bought Offset Software in 2008. 2 years later, the studio was closed and Project Offset was cancelled.
They're all around us. They control everything. They have always been here, waging their secret wars.
World of Darkness started out as a series of tabletop games in the early 90s. White Wolf Publishing and CCP Games merged in 2006 to make a big MMO based on World of Darkness. In 2010, CCP Games officially announced the MMO. It was thought that the game would be based on Vampire the Masquerade. It was to be a vampire MMO, and you would start out as a human. Themes like mystery, romance, power, and danger would be at the center of the game, aimed at an adult audience. But it was not to be. In April 2014, CCP Games cancelled the game and the IP has been sold off to Paradox Interactive.
They will come for you. It all begins when you die.
Reich was the first-person shooter set in a world where Nazi Germany won the Second World War. A fourth Reich was established and human experiments resulted in a new psychic superhuman. These superhumans are now being hunted, and you turn out to be one of them. The game offered a mix of magic and regular weaponry. Lots of the gameplay was based on physics. The game looked pretty awesome, but despite a $23 million budget, poor management resulted in the cancellation of this potential gem. Almost 5 years after US Marines fought a major urban battle in Iraq, Atomic Games announced a third-person shooter called 6 Days in Fallujah. It was a shooter that would tell the story of what had happened during the Second Battle of Fallujah in 2004. The game would have let you play as both the US Marines and the Iraqi insurgents to get a broader understanding of the conflict.
In the video game, you're not just watching it, but you're actually experiencing the battle as if you were there.
Konami jumped on board as its publisher, but it wouldn't take long for a mainstream media backlash to happen. Families of US Marines were angry, the media picked their side, and Konami was forced to step away from the project. As a result, 6 Days of Fallujah lost its funding, and even though Atomic Games claimed to continue their work, the game slowly became never-released vaporware.
How can I help?
Keep the drinks flowing, the dance floor hot, and the losers out.
Drinks, dancing, dorks. Got it.
In terms of interesting themes, This Is Vegas is one we should definitely mention in this list. In this Xbox 360 and PS3 game, you are a nobody who gets a job in the Vegas party scene. You need to work your way up and fight against a dude who wants to make the city family friendly. This Is Vegas offered a lot of seemingly irrelevant minigames like dancing, and you could be a bartender, and then do a wet t-shirt contest. No, We're not kidding.
And we've unlocked a bonus objective, the Wet T-shirt contest.
As far as we know, the action was limited to beating up drunk dudes in the club, but looking at screenshots, perhaps there's a bigger scope as well. This is Vegas was canned after Midway Games ran into trouble and Warner Brothers had no real ambitions for the game.
One way to sober up is to relieve yourself. While entertaining and fun, drinking, and what you can do while drunk highlights how interactive the environment is.
They ain't paying me enough for this shit.
Hey, we're on leave. They ain't paying you anything.
E3 2006 was an epic one. The event showcased many games and quite a bunch of them would never be released. 8 Days is one of those forgotten games. The game was a third-person shooter mixed with driving action. The game would take place over 8 days in 8 different states, and you could play as a detective or a guy who wanted revenge on the mob for kidnapping his son.
Watch out! Hold on! I'm too old for this
Sony cancelled this PS3 game 2 years after its announcement. We think the standards set by pre-rendered trailers were a bit too ambitious for the developer. One of the earliest third-party announcements for the Nintendo Wii was a horror game called Sadness. It was announced in 2006 when the Wii was still called Nintendo Revolution. The game stood out because of its black and white style, but we never really got a good look at it. It would take place in Eastern Europe before World War I and follow the story of a woman who needed to guide her blind son. After years of development, Studio Nibris canceled the project and shut its doors. All that remains is an old trailer and some artwork. That's sad. With LVon, we once again visit that fantasy world of elves. This was an action-adventure game made for PC and Xbox 360. It was announced in 2003, but 2 companies could not overcome their financial troubles without killing the project. In LVon, the elves were a young and emerging race, fighting for their place alongside gods and divine powers. At one point, the game was supposed to have a one-on-one online multiplayer mode as well. But when Tentacle Studios and Climax Studios got into financial troubles, the game was abandoned.
Welcome home.
What's really going on, Caroline?
I'm being set up. We're both being set up.
The studio behind famous games like Elite Dangerous and Planet Coaster was also working on The Outsider. This game was called an action thriller with strong sandbox elements. Air Force One has been shut down and you're the CIA agent charged with the crime. You explore Washington, D.C. as a fugitive trying to clear your name.
Don't you see? You're just a piece of the machinery.
You need to keep a low profile and find clues that would help you in your cause. As the game was nearing completion, publisher Codemasters pulled the plug. Frontier Developments did not have the financial resources to continue on its own, and therefore the project was abandoned.
You're nothing but a pawn to Cove. I can make you a knight.
Guillermo del Toro has won an Oscar for the movie Shape of Water, but he could have won a Game of the Year for the horror game Insane as well. Del Toro was on board as a director for a trilogy of horror games. Insane was supposed to be the first installment, made for PS3, Xbox 360, and PC. Publisher THQ got into financial trouble, and 2 years after its 2010 announcement, the game was cancelled. Currently, Guillermo del Toro owns the rights to the insane property, but the project is dormant for now. After 2 years of development, we didn't get much footage from the game besides the announcement teaser and some artwork. Which of these games do you remember? Are there any games you would like to see being released? Let us know and be sure to check out our new website zoomingames.com for more content and follow us on YouTube, Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram. See you in our next video.
This was the best bachelorette party weekend ever. I'm totally coming back here for my next one.